Hey guys, it's Christine, also known as IvyWinter. Thank you for joining me for another Disney Book Club video. Oh my god, this video is, I almost want to say overdue, but not really, because the book that we all just read was a doozy, and I gave everyone like a good 8 to 10 weeks to finish it, and from what I've heard in the Discord, a lot of people still haven't finished it, and hey, don't be ashamed because I only just did. The last book that we have read was Disney War by James B. Stewart. And as you can see by the hard copy version, this thing is like a dictionary, a Bible. I mean, I don't even know. It's crazy. This book is like 530 pages and it is dense pages. Like this isn't, you know, some big font text here. This is dense pages with a lot of information and is just one of the most informationally overwhelming books I've ever read, but also really fascinating, and I did enjoy it. But oh boy, is not a book to jump into lightly. It's really, really good. So Disney War was voted on by you guys. It's actually been a book that's been brought up multiple times this year that people want to read. And I kind of put it off because I knew that it was a doozy. And I thought, you know, let's just do it towards the end of the year. Everybody wants to read it. I also know that it is Rob of Midway to Main Street's like one of his favorite books. It's one that he pulls a lot of his ideas from because there is so much information in here. And so, I mean, what this essentially goes through is the Eisner era of Disney. And I mean, that is, let's talk about a really high level summary of what this book is about. I mean, this book is about all of the wheelings and dealings and relationships and issues and everything that was going on behind the scenes when it comes to just about everything that Eisner was working on, when it comes to parks, when it comes to movies, TV, you know, when they acquired ABC, when Bob Iger joined, issues with Ovitz, issues with Roy Disney, like just everything. And it's funny because growing up, I knew Eisner as the face of Disney at the time. I was a kid who grew up in the 90s, and Michael Eisner was the one doing the like Worlds of Disney movie, you know, introductions. We would sometimes like tape Disney movies on VHS. I remember we taped Mary Poppins so we could watch it over and over again, and we had him on the tape. Like we started, you know, recording when Michael Eisner was doing the whole intro. And, you know, that's even in this book about how he decided on himself to do that job when they had looked at a bunch of different people to do it, including Tom Hanks, which was really interesting, a very young Tom Hanks. And he decided on himself, and everybody was really worried because they were like, Michael Eisner is not a good speaker. He can't be the next Walt Disney, you know, trying to talk about the parks or talk about movies or whatever. But obviously he did it anyway. So in my mind, I always had, I guess, kind of a positive outlook on Eisner. Obviously, as I got older and I read more and I learned more, I was like, okay, he wasn't always like the best CEO, and he made some not so great decisions. But I always mostly held him in high regard. And this book is really interesting because I don't think it tries to disparage him at all, but I think it tries to give a very honest view of what was going on in the background. And it shows you that Eisner was not always the nicest guy. He was not always the easiest guy to work with, but neither were a lot of the other people that he was working with. I mean, you're talking about Hollywood, essentially. You're talking about this kind of egos and bigwigs and heads of corporations, and it's a little bit cliche and predictable of like the kind of personalities they are, but it's also really truthful. Like I said, there's so much information here. You know, I noted down a few things to discuss, but even as I go through it in the back of my mind and I have my notes and everything, it's like there's so much I didn't write down because it is just so heavy on so much information but I think in a really good way. I think if you were really interested in the inner workings of Disney, especially at a time where they were both having their comeuppance, but also having some serious problems towards the end of the 90s with some of their movies that weren't doing so well. Look, I know Hunchback was one of them, I admit it. And with issues with Disneyland Paris, they talk about that as well, and how that was like Eisner's baby and he was so excited for it, but like wasn't really handling that super well and didn't really know what he was doing when it came to parks. You know, there is just a ton of that era. So if that era is something that really interests you, then this is definitely the book for you. If Eisner interests you, if like all of the pieces of the puzzle coming together to what Disney is today interests you, then you'll like this. I mean, this is very post-Walt. This isn't, you know, the beginnings of Disneyland or the Golden Age or any of that. Some people prefer that time frame of Disney and learning about that time frame more. So if that's more for you, like this doesn't touch on any of that. I think it's really interesting to hear some of the backstories of some movies that either got greenlit or didn't, or that Disney let go and became big elsewhere. I know Eisner really, you know, pats himself on the back for being the one to give Indiana Jones a chance. And whether there's agreement or not on that, I mean, he was a big influence on it actually happening. And now we have a big franchise that we know and love today that has turned into multiple movies, that has turned into a stunt show and a ride and maybe another later not so great movie. And so it's interesting to read about those sorts of things. You know, even things as small as like 3 Men and a Baby and the chances that they took on making that, which apparently was like an adaptation, I think, from a French film of pretty much the same sort of story and same sort of name that Eisner saw when he was working on Disneyland Paris, and he said, we gotta make this movie. So it's really interesting to hear titles like that aren't, you know, you wouldn't think maybe Disney, because maybe they're through Touchstone or other avenues, but you go, oh yeah, I know that movie, and like it's kind of crazy to hear the backstory of how they came about. And of course, I think the biggest, you know, ongoing theme in the whole book is the issues that Eisner had with Katzenberg, and it's so interesting to see how they started out as this friendship that turned kind of tumultuous, and they really butt heads, and then they were trying to push Katzenberg out, and it's just, it's kind of sad, I guess, to see how the relationship de-evolved, but at the same time, it's really eye-opening. And again, it's not like they paint Katzenberg in the best light either. It's not like Eisner's like the monster and was horrible to Katzenberg. You know, there's definitely some like inner financial disagreements and negotiations and little tricky things that go on that you're just like, okay, Disney is not as, it's not this perfect company that I think a lot of people think of. It's like every other media company, and there are issues, and there are people who are a little backstabby, and there are people who think they are doing the right thing, the best thing, making the best decisions, and other people who disagree with them. This book is split into 3 different sections, I believe. Actually, I could be lying to you. Yeah, 3 sections. So, The Wonderful World of Disney, Disenchanted Kingdom, and the Disney War. So, as you can kind of tell by the titles, there's kind of that breakdown as it goes on. I actually both read the physical copy and had an audiobook copy, which I highly recommend to get through a book of this magnitude, because I was able to listen to the audio version while I was taking walks, while I was in the garden, whatever it was, and then read. I was talking about it with Rob, and he said to me that he was excited to hear what I felt because he felt like this could be an HBO miniseries, and I 100% agree with that assessment. I think that would actually be a great way to disseminate this information because it is a lot in a book. But man, this could be, I could easily see each of the 3 sections being its own season, really, like 10 episodes, because there's just so much going on. It would be neat to see something like that. I don't know if it ever will come to fruition, like an actual miniseries. And if Disney did it themselves for Disney Plus, I don't think that they would let it be so honest. But it's really clear to me why this was a New York Times bestseller when it came out. I mean, the amount of research put into it, the amount of just time and heart and wanting to be accurate really made me enjoy this author a lot. And the author had time and spent time interviewing Eisner in general over a number of years. So that is a huge part of the information that he is getting. I want to give this book, normally I give kind of like a grade for it. I'm gonna give it an A-, and the only reason I'm giving it an A- is because I don't think it's for everyone, in that it's like incredibly hefty. It's incredibly a lot of information. It might actually put a damper on how you feel about the Disney company. Some people would rather not. I find it really interesting, but some people would just rather avoid that kind of information. And it is a lot. It is super dense, and that's the only thing that I'm kind of knocking it for. It's weird because it's a double-edged sword. Like, I think it's great that there's so much information, but I think in one book it is a bit overwhelming, and it definitely took a really long time for me to get through, and I could tell that for other people it is taking them also a really long time to get through. But man, if you want to have some really big insights, if you want to maybe even learn something that's going to spark off wanting to look even deeper into that thing, because forget it. I mean, this could probably be 5 books if everything was really fully explored. This is definitely a must-have for like die-hard Disney fans. That said, as always, I am giving away my hard copy of this book. So if you haven't read it and you want to read it, or if there's someone else you want to give it to, it's really easy to enter these giveaways. There's only 2 things. You just need to subscribe. If you're already a subscriber, you're good, you're golden, and then you need to leave a comment below about why you want to read the book or who you might be giving the book to if it's for someone else. That's it, easy as that. I usually pick a winner in about 1 week exactly from when the video goes up. So 1 week, 7 days, I will randomly pick a winner. I will contact you. Please, please, please keep an eye on your comments on this channel, because I'm gonna respond to your comment. And if you miss it, I'm gonna have to pick another winner. And I've had to do that before. So you don't wanna miss out if you win. So that will be in about a week. Since it is December, and since this book was a doozy, we're actually gonna take off for the rest of the year. The next book club book will be sometime in January. I wanted everyone to just decompress from all of the information, but also personally, I'm trying to catch up on some other books that I'm way, way behind on. Some fiction books that I have. I just started listening to the audiobook version of Obama's book, The Promised Land, so I'd like to get through that. And I'm sure we all have non-Disney things we want to read and get into. So take this as your holiday period break, and then we'll be back into the book club next year. If you like this video, then like it. If you like me, you should subscribe. I make videos every single week or so. It's been a little tough lately with my job. I think I've said this before. I work in a utility. I work social media. And when we work storms, we work weekends, and this is prime storm season. I mean, hurricane season, and then all the way through winter storms in the Northeast. It gets crazy. So I'm often working long hours or most weekends. So I try to fit in my recordings in between when I can. So I apologize for that. But you should stick around anyway, because this channel is really fun. We've got a great community. If you want to join the Discord, I'll put the link down below. If you want to check out the TTA podcast, which I do with Rob of Midway to Main Street, I will also put the link down below. And that's it, you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a great rest of the day. Bye.